All right, there we go. Uh, how's everything going?
Pretty good. Happy to have you back
Yeah, it's been a while. I saw you briefly in Korea last year, this summer, but
this summer.
yeah, I don't think we got to. Yeah, I don't think we got to talk very much. But yeah,
Right.
how's everything been, man?
As you know, the because of
Uh-huh.
the politics, it's
Uh-huh.
very noisy in here in Korea.
Uh-huh. Uh-huh.
But I'm focusing on my own business, and also I started this YouTube channel from this
Mm-hmm.
April, and I've been dedicating myself into it, and having fun,
Okay.
meeting
Okay,
Bitcoiners
that's
in
good.
Korea, educating Bitcoin to Korean publics, and it's been a fun
Mm-hmm.
experience.
Okay.
How about you?
That's it's good. I mean, the bull market's nice, so but there's like whenever bull markets come around, I always get busy. There's like random people asking me to do stuff, and I don't know, it's hard for
Right.
me to say no to a lot of it, especially when they're paying me. So yeah, it's been good. It's been good.
So are you in Texas right now?
Yeah, yeah, I'm in Austin.
Right, right. So the time is central time, right?
Yeah, so it's Monday evening, 7 p.m. right now.
So
I
I
think
got
it's
this
morning over there.
yeah, it's 10 a.m. in the morning in Korea.
Uh-huh. Yeah, and it's like Christmas Eve, right? Like it's
Right, this is Christmas Eve. Happy Merry
uh-huh.
Christmas Eve. So your new book is going to be published in Korea soon, and I
Okay.
might ask you to interview with me one more time.
Uh-huh.
Right,
This
your new
book?
book,
Okay. All right.
that book.
Okay. Okay. Great.
And I heard there's another guy translating your Thank God for Bitcoin in Korean
Mm-hmm.
also.
Yeah, there's a couple of guys that are working on it. And we signed a contract, so it should all be good. But yeah, I'm
Yeah.
hoping that it'll be ready by the summer. And I hope to visit again next summer. So we'll see.
Are you going to be here for the next Bitcoin Soul event, or is it going to be just another tour for you guys?
Uh, I mean, we were gonna spend like a month in Japan anyway, so and it's right there. So if it works out, then yeah, we'll like my kids want to go back to Korea and get a few things and stuff like that. So we'll see.
Oh, so the whole
Hmm.
family again, the family trip, right?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I mean, it's that's what we're doing every summer now, so it's a lot of fun.
Yeah, I'm going to Japan this April. No,
Hmm.
February. I'm
Okay.
taking my parents. I love
Just
Japan.
to watch her to like tour around or something? What's the main reason?
Yeah, first I love Japanese food. I've been to
Uh-huh.
Tokyo for the first time in my life last year, and then I loved
Uh-huh.
it. I love the food,
Mm-hmm.
and
Mm-hmm.
I like running, And I went to
Mm-hmm.
this Imperial Palace in Tokyo, and I there's a
Mm-hmm.
running course around the
Mm-hmm.
palace, and
Mm-hmm.
there were so many runners like running, really experts, and I loved running
Uh-huh.
there. So yeah, I want to be there again. I want to take my parents this time. Can you briefly introduce yourself to my subscribers, just in case they don't know who you are?
Mm-hmm.
They want to figure out who you are. I talked about you many times to my subscribers,
Mm-hmm.
but
Mm-hmm.
I showed the picture that I took with you in Da Nang, Vietnam. Do you
Nice.
remember the
Uh-huh.
picture? I
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I saw the post you put on LinkedIn about like how that inspired you to go start exercising or something like that.
Yeah, yeah,
But yeah,
yeah.
I remember. Yeah, it was bunch of people from Korea that came over. That was a lot of fun, and we got to
Yeah,
hang out
yeah.
when we were in Korea. So yeah, I remember.
Right, right. So
Okay. All
who
right.
you are?
So just brief introduction. I'm Jimmy Song. I'm a Bitcoin expert. I've been in Bitcoin since 2011. I've written 5 books on Bitcoin. One a very technical one that's translated into Korean, along with another one, the Little Bitcoin book that's also translated into Korean. I've been coding all my life. I understand this stuff pretty well. I've been doing a lot. I teach. I consult. I invest. I do a bunch of things in the bit base, but mostly I explain technical things to people. That's what I end up doing.
Lovely. So in your new book, you talk about how fiat money is ruining everything. And you said there's a birth rate issue in Korea, right? Do you think Bitcoin will be a solution to this problem to Korean?
So the thing I've observed about Korea is that there's a lot of old people that are not letting go of their houses, right? Like it's or their positions or whatever. It's like does that get solved with Bitcoin? I mean, somewhat, right? Because there is sort of like this almost involuntary wealth transfer from, fiat holders to Bitcoin holders. But the bigger thing that needs to happen, and I believe will happen, I don't know on what timeline, is that you start dismantling sort of like the administrative state, the bureaucrats, the people that don't add anything. And there's a lot of that in the US, but there's a lot of that all over the world. And like especially in places like Korea, where you have sort of this cultural sort of support of a lot of that bureaucracy. So you'll get a lot of people in these huge companies like the Samsungs and the LGs and places Hyundais and places like that where you're not really sure what the person is doing, but they get paid kind of like a large salary, right? Just because they have seniority. And that I think like there isn't sort of that churn that you have in a more dynamic entrepreneurial society. It's still the case in Korea where you kind of stay at a place for 20 30 years and you sort of hope to get up there. Now, like that's not to say that that's necessarily bad. It is kind of nice for the person at least to have a stable job or whatever. But there's a lot of inefficiency that goes into that because there's not enough competition. If there was a lot of competition, and certainly at the retail level, there's way more competition in Korea than I see in the US. So, you go and try to find like an escape room here. There's like 2 3 choices in Austin. You look for an escape room in Seoul, there's probably like 30 in one neighborhood, right? Like it's like insane the level of competition. And that happens at the retail level, but there's a sort of like an administrative bloat. There's a bureaucratic bloat, not just within government. Of course, that like pretty much every government bureaucrat is a net negative in terms of productivity. But there's also these large companies and so on. And honestly, that's probably a large part of like the bitterness and the sort of political wrangling that's going on right now is that there is sort of like the rich poor kind of divide that's there. So that needs some dismantling, and the reason why a lot of that exists is because of fiat money printing. Now, Korea can't print nearly as much as the U.S., and in fact, they need to export a whole ton of stuff to the U.S. to get those dollars in, so that they can keep up a reasonable peg with their currency. But there's still a significant amount of bureaucracy and rent seeking and administrative people that aren't really adding anything that are still there. And until that gets flushed out, and I think that naturally does through fiat money, it's not going to get fixed. But it's like hopefully the U.S. starts on that train. Like we got Doge and Elon Musk and Vivek Ramaswamy working on that stuff. And if the U.S. does it, I can see a lot of other countries sort of following suit. And we're hearing about a lot of other places. France and Germany in particular. The right-wing parties that are more Trumpian are starting to get a lot of a lot of traction. So we'll see if that's the road that they go down, and I think Bitcoin can definitely usher that in. But how long does it take, right? Is it 5 years or 50? I don't know, but like in 50 years, Korea might be like 20 million people. I don't know. So it's like what it might be a little late. So that's where I'm thinking. How it'll play out is really a political issue, and that's very unpredictable.
Yeah, I also studied in both China and the US. I went to college in Washington, D.C., right? And one thing I noticed really strange in Korean culture is the private institute. Everybody, every parent, every household wants their kids to go to this private institute, couple of them, or even 3 or 4 of them after the school, and then They get prepared
Oh,
for
the hagwons. Okay. I was like,
the
what's a
hagwon, private institute.
Yeah, yeah. You should speak Korean when it's like like that's not a term I was familiar with in English. So yeah, it's
Okay.
clearer in Korean.
So
Yeah,
the hagwon, right? After
Uh-huh.
school, they go to, bunch of hagwons and then they prepare for
Mhm.
the higher level of education, right?
Mhm.
They even start when they are 10 or 11 years old, and then, parents spend huge amount of money into this kind of, education, private education.
Mhm.
And then they want their kids to go to the college no matter
Mhm.
what. Preferably, they want their kids to go to the best colleges in Seoul, the three of
Mhm.
them, the top three.
Mhm.
Even if they can't go to those top schools, then they have to go to the colleges in Seoul.
Mhm.
So, it's just packed. Everybody has to compete against each other on this one exam when they're in high school, and then they have to go to the good colleges. And they go to these colleges, and then they graduate from the colleges. They have to go to the, huge conglomerates who
Mhm.
pay the good wages, right? Samsung,
Mhm.
Hyundai, those corporations. And when they get into there, then what? There's just that's like the end of their career journey. And
Uh-huh.
that's why they have to fall into these investments. They have to invest in stocks. They have to invest in real estate because the wages are there. It's just it's just there. There's no upside potential whatsoever. So they have to make this breakthrough to get better, to get by, because the Korean won value is diminishing, right? So that's why they find out altcoin is really interesting. It has a huge upside potential, but they just don't realize it's almost impossible to make a good profit out of it, right? Why do you think it's so hard for Korean people to figure out altcoins are shitcoins? It's so hard
Yeah.
to make a profit out of it. They get busted every cycle. They
Uh,
see them collapsing every time, but why do you think XRPs, it's becoming a
mhm.
huge boom again this cycle, and they just neglect Bitcoin?
Yeah, it's interesting. As you were talking, I was thinking about just sort of like the reputation East Asia has, and it's not just Korea, but Korea, Japan, Taiwan.
Yeah.
And this is like pre altcoins, pre Bitcoin, like even back in the 90s and so on. East Asia has had the reputation of being the absolute last comers to any kind of investment vehicle. So, yeah, anything hot in the US, it goes to Europe first and eventually finds its way to East Asia. By the time East Asian retail is into it, everyone else in the world knows to get out of it. That, but that's a common thing. Now, why does that happen? Well, there's an information advantage to being in the U.S. and so on. Europe is closer to the dollar than the won or the yen are, and so that kind of makes sense. But there's also sort of like a cultural thing, and the main cultural thing that I think you were pointing out and is that parents really want to reduce risk for their children significantly, right? And this is why they send them to Hagwon. This is why they want them to go to the best universities and the best companies and everything else. Even growing up as a Korean American, the things that the Korean parents want you to do are like the most stable and risk-free professions, right? It's doctor, lawyer, or engineer or something like that. This is why like watching somebody like Edward Lee is so profound because
Right.
that's not one of the, like paths that Korean parents typically will steer you to. It's almost entirely done because the individual in question is sort of willing to take on that risk and go for it. But that's definitely a cultural thing where the reduction of risk in career profile is something that everyone strives for. So what happens when you reduce risk significantly is that you do reduce the downside, but you also reduce the upside as well. This is what happens when you go become a lawyer. You're going to make good money, but you're not going to make life-changing money. You're never going to get there because you're a lawyer, right? Like you charge, a few $100s per hour, and that's an excellent rate, right? And a lot of people are happy to do that. But if you want to change the world or add a lot of value, you're going to have to do something that's a little bit outside the sort of like the well-trodden paths of everybody else. But that's the direction that that Asian cultures tend to push their children towards is something that is as as little risk as possible so that they have a good life. And I've seen this in my own parents, right? Like it's funny because my mom used to tell me, all I wanted you to be was just somebody that was normal. I was like, sorry, mom, that's not what I am. It's not what I've seen a lot of my friends that go down that. I have cousins and my sibling and all that. They've gone on to be lawyers and doctors or whatever.
Yeah.
But that road is riskless and it caps your upside, but it also sort of it's a very crowded road, right? Like if you're trying to go down the road that everyone else goes towards success, it is just enormously crowded. Like the exam that you were talking about, that it's famous because I think they shut down the airport for a few days or something like that and stuff. It's absolutely insane because that's how many people are trying to get into 서울대학 or 연세대학 or whatever. They all want to go to the best so that they can then sort of have the rest of their life set up for them. But really, the entrepreneurial energy, the civilization is built from risk takers. So when you reduce risk like that, you have a significant appetite to take on risk, ironically enough, because you have almost no risk anywhere else in your life. So, I know a lot of Korean people are addicted to gambling and so on. And that's kind of how I see altcoins. It's a lot of gambling. And honestly, that's kind of understandable when you're living sort of like a very structured, riskless life to desire more risk. So there's definitely a cultural component and there's an information component. But I mean the last part is just it's a very conformist culture as well. So you see your neighbor get in and do well. You're going to want to get in, and that is particularly strong in Korean culture where you want to ape in and you have a lot of FOMO about whatever your neighbor is doing with their stocks or whatever. So that tends to snowball into really huge bubbles. And I mean we've seen that many times in Korea on a lot of different things. But that because you have sort of like a uniform culture, that tends to happen as well. That's not nearly as much the case in the US because you have a melting pot of a lot of different cultures. So people don't ape into something because their neighbor does. It's like, oh, that person's just kind of weird and we're not going to listen to them. Whereas in Korea, it's like, okay, my cousin did this and he made a lot of money, so I got to go do it. Or it's a very, there are benefits to sort of cultural homogeneity, I guess, but there are also downsides, and it makes you a little bit more vulnerable because there's not as much diversity, right? Like everyone has sort of the same attack surface vulnerability or something like that.
Right. I think one of the reasons Koreans love altcoins is because they have this tendency to like technology. When they study about their investment strategy, when they when they form their portfolio with stocks, real estate, and some of the altcoins, they tend to pick something that has a higher level of technology. I think that's why they fall into these bunch of altcoins who claim to have a better technology than Bitcoin. Bitcoin is often represented as a 2G smartphone. No, 2G mobile phone, and Ethereum is the smartphone, and Solana is a better version of smartphone, etc. So that's a common notion in Korea. Most crypto investors think of this way, and they just think of Bitcoin as old technology, right? So I saw you at the Lightning Con event in Da Nang last year, right? And so do you think Lightning Network has a breakthrough for Bitcoin as a scalability solution? Do you think Lightning Network will be changing the dynamics of Bitcoin and even appeal to Korean public later on?
Yeah, I mean, the thing about that error is that it's been made many times all over the world, right? Like people see Bitcoin, they think technology, and okay, that means that the better tech will win, and that's not how money works. Bitcoin is money, not technology. Well, it is also technology, but it has a lot of monetary properties, and this is the part that sort of confuses a lot of people because they think, okay, well, in technology, if you have a smartphone with, a better camera or something, then, that's going to win over one that doesn't. But this is money we're talking about. It has a network effect. There are certain properties of money that you want. And decentralization and credible long-term scarcity happen to be two things that are extremely important that if you're enhancing the technology, you necessarily give up those things, right? So Ethereum, for example, is highly, highly centralized. And even like to the degree that people think it's like, technically advanced or whatever, it's really not. And you look at something like, how it was created and so on.
Yeah.
Like the Bitcoin addresses have something called a checksum, so that if you, misstate a letter in the address, any wallet can tell, okay, yeah, you didn't write this down correctly. Can you go and ask again or something like that? And that's the function of a checksum. Ethereum, when it started, they decided, let's not have a checksum because Vitalik, being 19 and thinking that he knows everything, like a lot of young programmers do, all right, I'm going to invent my own thing and it'll be good. And of course, it wasn't because you put like the wrong letter in or something like that, and suddenly all your funds are gone. Gone out of ether, as it would be. But it was.
Yeah.
It's not even technically good, but they've marketed themselves as that. I remember talking to this guy. I think it was like Consensus 19, and he was from Korea, and we were just talking, and he's like, "Yeah, but Ethereum has smart contracts," and he's like, "Hold on, hold on. What do you think a smart contract is?" It's like, it's what Ethereum does, blah blah blah. I'm like, okay, you do realize that Bitcoin has had smart contracts from day one, right? He's like, Bitcoin has smart contracts. Like he did. He was like, and for the rest of the night, like every time I still can't believe Bitcoin has smart contracts. I did not know this, right? This is like that's how little retail often knows about the technology, that they're just told something and they just sort of believe it. And I kind of get it, right? Like Koreans are very trusting. It's a very trust-based society and so on. So yeah, like your neighbor tells you, hey, yeah, Ethereum's better because it has smart contracts, and it's like, okay, Bitcoin has no one's there to correct them or to show. There's no one technical to tell them, hey, like you're kind of wrong here about all of this stuff. But all that said, the big thing is Bitcoin is decentralized, has credible long-term scarcity, and those are the two most important things about money. None of this other stuff has any of that. And this is why Bitcoin has been successful over a period of 15 years, whereas altcoins come and go day by day. Like it's literally day by day these days with like meme coins and so on. Now, with respect to Lightning and all this other stuff, if you actually know technology, you recognize the Lightning Network as the brilliant innovation that it is. All of this other stuff is LARPing, right? And if your audience isn't familiar with that term, LARPing, it stands for live action role play. You're pretending to be something, right? Rather than actually being that thing. Bitcoin has Lightning. It has, there's an implementation of Arc. There's state chains. There's a whole, BitVM. There's a whole bunch of technologies that actual real technical people that know what the heck they're talking about and not just, talking marketing speak or whatever that actually have a lot of this stuff. And the thing is, like, these things take a while to mature. So Lightning started, 2017, 2018, and it's been maturing for a while. And it's now at a point where you can go to any Bitcoin conference, pay for everything in Lightning. And, I'll sell books, for example, at a bunch of conferences. And take payment in Bitcoin through the Lightning Network, and it works great. Few people know about it though, because you don't have all these marketing dollars that say Ethereum or Solana have, or even Ripple. And that's what they use it for, is to deceive the public. Like, Koreans kind of need to be a little less trusting, right? This is the slogan that we have in Bitcoin. It's verify, don't trust. And once you trust people, they're going to take advantage of you. And these are people that have an incentive to pump their coin so that they can dump it on you and so on.
Right. One of the things that I do these days, I take these my friends to a bar, and then we like drink together, and then at the end we like Dutch pay, right? And then we do the rock scissors papers, and then the winner pays for the whole thing with the credit card, and then the rest of the group pays me with the Bitcoin or with the Lightning wallet. That's one thing I do every time I go to a bar with my friends, and then they experience the Lightning Network and then Bitcoin instant payments at the time. Then they just find it really interesting. Wow, this works. Bitcoin, it doesn't take 1 hour to transact Bitcoin, and yeah, it's a aha moment for them, right? So so there are many Bitcoin experts in Korea too, and I think some of them, the one group, advocates that, claims that there's going to be cycle repeating next year. Bitcoin has 4-year cycle, so it's going to go up a lot and then crush, probably in the early 2026. The other group, on the other hand, because of the institutional adoption this cycle, the Bitcoin price won't go up that much and it won't crash. It just will gradually increase. What do you think will happen?
Yeah, that's a tough one, and I don't really I'm not really in either camp. I don't know, right? Like, this is.
Right.
But I get it. Like, these are the most popular videos on YouTube. What the price is going to do in the next 6 months or something like that, because that's what everyone wants to know.
Yeah.
But I mean, we have had 4-year cycles. This is true, and you can look it up: 2013, 2017, 2021, and the next one would be 2025. So there's decent reason for that. We have 3 previous cycles that we can look at and say, hey, there's a pattern here, possibly, but if it could certainly break on the 4th cycle. I don't know. And I can also see the other side, where they're saying, okay, we have institutional adoption, so volatility is dampened, and maybe it goes up a little slower. But you don't have like these crazy bull runs or whatever. I mean, that could be. I mean, I suspect that like, it's that slow and steady rise. I don't think that's going to happen, just because it's never been Bitcoin's history. In fact, that hasn't been almost any commodity's history. It's only with centralized intervention that you get steady sort of prices on anything, right? Like, you have, for example, in the US, the Strategic Petroleum Reserve. And when the gas prices are low, they buy up a lot of it, so the price goes up. And when the price is very high, they sell from the reserve to bring it back down. This is how it's controlled. This is also how the Korean Central Bank manages the won against the dollar for, I think the last, I think almost 40 years now. They've been trying to keep it at around 1,000 won to $1. And, within like plus or minus 30% or something like that. They've been mostly successful. Obviously, the current situation's a little bit out of the norm, but that's what a central bank does is they buy up their own currency when it's cheap. And the fact that they aren't doing that right now probably tells you that they don't have the dollars to buy it with, or if their currency is really strong, they just print more of their own currency into the market. So, yeah, this is what sort of causes artificial lack of volatility, right? Steadiness over time is some centralized manager that does that. So if you don't have that, then it's going to be volatile. So I suspect that Bitcoin's going to continue to be volatile. You'll see 70% drawdowns and days where it goes up like $20,000 or something like that. Like that stuff happens all the time. And this is part of the holding mentality is you have to be steady through all of that and not get too high or too low and just have enough savings so that or do whatever work that you need to continue to make money and use it as savings so that you're not dipping into it at that worst possible moment and you're using it to go and do the stuff that you really want to do rather than like an office job or something, right? Like go do stuff, right? Like it's crazy to me how weak the dreams of people in the fiat economy are, right? I just want to go,
Yeah.
on a vacation once in a while or whatever. It's like, okay, those are not dreams worthy of a human being. Come on, like go and try stuff that's a little bit further out there, right? Like try to change something, do something more interesting than I want to live a comfortable life. So yeah, it's the volatility I think will stay. Now, like whether this 4-year cycle happens this time or I don't know. I suspect maybe, but who knows?
Yeah, that's the golden ratio that I always tell my subscribers too. There's a really famous saying in the Bible, right? It's love your neighbor as you love yourself. Is it correct?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's the one, the saying that I love the most from the Bible. I'm not a Christian, but I somehow, pray every morning these days. I listen to this morning prayer from the YouTube and then I pray for 15 minutes. I don't know. But just like you said, I'm taking risk because I'm an entrepreneur. I run my business and then I always bump into these hardships and difficult times, even many times a day. And then one very good solution that I can, resolve these problems and issues is having a morning prayer. And I found it really useful. And I suggest the subscribers who's watching this show can try sometime.